Hi, welcome to one of our coffee time chats. Today we're joined by Dr. Donald Wise of Strategic Solution Partners, who are one of our expert partners. In this discussion, we talk with Dr. Don about how the hotel industry looks post-pandemic. We consider the cost of living crisis and the potential impact on travel this summer, and we also reflect on perceived value in relation to current inflated prices. Finally, we asked Dr. Don his advice for owners who might be looking to raise finance for a refurb or may even be considering an exit strategy. Really hope you enjoy the conversation and please feel free to comment below. And you know what to do with those thumbs up and subscribe buttons. Thanks so much. Let's get started. Roll the intro. Hey, Dr. Don, thanks for joining us today. Great to have the opportunity to talk with you. How are things with you? You well?
Good morning, Trevor. I'm excellent, thank you. It's a beautiful day here in Newport Beach, California.
Wonderful. Well, look, I really appreciate you giving up some time to talk with us today. And obviously, we're going to be talking about the hotel industry, what's happened, what's going on, what are some of the implications going further forward. But before we get into our topic, it would only be right to ask you if you could just give us a bit of an introduction. I know that you have your own business and you're one of the partners of Strategic Solution Partners. But if you can tell us a little bit more about yourself and your organization, that would be great.
Certainly. I've been financing and selling hotels for 38 years, 20 years with C.B. Richard Ellis. Back in 1984, I was the one that started what we call the Lodging and Hospitality Services practice back then,
Right.
which today is CBRE Hotels. I ran that practice for 15 years for 78 offices and 3,300 guys and gals. And then fast forward to 2007, a small investment bank here in California called Johnson Capital was about to do an IPO. And Lehman Brothers looked at them and said, you guys are terrific at office, industrial, retail, multifamily, but you should really have a hospitality lending practice. Mm-hmm. So I was brought on as a managing partner. I created that group. I ran that group for 3.5 years for a much smaller firm, 22 offices, about 125 guys and gals. And then fast forward a few years, and that firm sold to Willie Walker and Walker and Dunlap. So over the years, I've created the transactional practice for CBRE, the company, okay, and the hospitality lending practice for Walker and Dunlap, the company. Trimble was created in July of 2010 after I left Johnson. And we have grown from 3 principals to 15 over the years. And we continue to finance hotels, sell hotels, primarily off market. We do preferred equity. We provide financing for PIPs, for product improvement plans, to improve, to do CapEx upgrades on hotels. Pretty much anything on the finance space and hospitality, primarily domestically, on a case by case. We do go outside the United States. We have executed engagements before in the Caribbean and Mexico extensively, but primarily domestically United States.
Right. Perfect. Well, I think, considering we're going to be talking about the hotel industry, what we should be doing, what they could be doing in the future, you seem perfectly positioned to be able to look at the industry from above looking down, should I say, rather than being in the weeds of actually trying to run the hotel at this current moment in time. So let's pick your brains and let's start off with just a reflection at the moment as to your view on where the hotel industry sits. And I know that is a very wide question, but coming out of the pandemic, post-pandemic, kind of macro observations as to what you are seeing of the hotel industry currently.
Well, the hotel industry, it tends to be a survivor. Mm-hmm. We have been through so very, very much. We got through the terrible events of 9/11. We managed to get through the RTC debacle that we were very active in back in the 90s. We got through the Great Recession, and now we're coming out on the backside of the pandemic. So the hotel industry is incredibly resilient, but obviously, we have some headwinds. Yeah. We had the tail at the wind at our behind us, tailwinds for quite some time, and now we've got some bumps in the road ahead. Labor, of course, is a huge issue. for new build construction cost increases are huge. Logistical issues, transportation issues, getting timber, steel, et cetera, to sites.
Hmm.
All of those costs are going up dramatically. At the same time, we have the Fed, threatening to continue to bump interest rates in 50 bip bumps for several months to come.
Yeah, I heard it could get up
But
to 5% fairly shortly.
yeah, so we got some headwinds, but we're a good industry. We have great people. I've said many times that the only time I've stayed in this crazy business for 38 years is the people.
Hmm.
We have tremendous human beings. We have tremendous passion for the industry. So we'll get through it, but we do have some bumps in the road, Trevor.
And what are we seeing in terms of the legacy of the pandemic in terms of actually on the hotels themselves? Are there are a lot of them that are on the edge? Have most of it been able to weather their way through it? I mean, what's just your broad take on the overall position?
Well, there were some very grim statistics very early on by the various lodging institutions and so forth, that as many as 70,000 hotels would go bankrupt and so forth. Of course, that never happened.
Hmm.
Between the various federal stimulus in this country, that never happened. But that being said, there are still a lot of properties that are still, delinquent, have waived, I'm sorry, have postponed interest payments for maybe a year, maybe 2 years.
Yeah.
Somehow, some way that has to be repaid. Not all of that with every lender is going to be tacked on the back of that loan. So that's one issue. We had a lot of functionally obsolete properties that probably just will never reopen and are going to be converted to some form of residential, whether it's corporate housing or senior housing or in close to universities for student housing.
Hmm.
Um, and we've seen technology really ramp up from the standpoint of realizing that, when unions will not allow a general manager or employee that does this or that to cross work in the hotel environment.
Hmm.
Sometimes technology may be the answer to the riddle there.
Yeah.
All this touchless check-in and all these various things. A lot of these have been, sort of on steroids
Yeah.
because of the pandemic. And obviously those are labor saving, which of course is bad because that means we lose some jobs.
Hmm.
But we've seen a lot of changes which will stay because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And frankly, we saw the same thing in previous recessions. After the terrible events of 9/11, we realized that we had to get leaner and meaner in many ways.
Hmm.
So these kinds of events are always a wake up call from the standpoint of being figured out how to become more efficient, how to get rid of some of the fat, and still at the same time be empathetic because these are human beings and these are jobs and all these issues.
That makes sense. Are you seeing any differences? And again, I've got some more specific questions I'm keen to ask you, but just while we're on the broad observations at the moment, do you see any differences in terms of how the luxury markets are returning? I mean, I'm using different terminology to maybe what's used in the US, but we have like our economy products,
Sure.
like a Premier Inn Travel Lodge in the UK. We then have our 4-star properties, and then we have our luxury 5-star properties. Are you seeing any differences in terms of how they are recovering and also appetite for people coming into the industry? And we're going to talk about future looking and investing in the industry a little bit later, but just a general observation on the different markets and how some of them are responding as we come out.
Well, the high end seems to be doing very well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I must admit that California, is a bit of a bubble
Yeah.
compared to the rest of the United States, or certainly compared to the rest of the world. But I mean, we're actually seeing some of our coastal properties, thinking of one particular property in Santa Barbara, they pushed the average daily rate probably from 1,000 to 1,500 with the pandemic.
Wow. Okay.
In other properties on the coast, that even during our severest lockdown period, they were running 85% occupancy on the weekends,
Mm-hmm.
just because people wanted to get the heck out of Dodge, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's clearly case by case, but overall the high end seems to be doing very well, relatively speaking. And the rest of the markets, it's just so case by case, Trevor.
Right.
I mean, any drive-to market is going to do well. the roadside properties throughout the United States, the properties such as you alluded to, the more budget
Yeah.
properties, actually did very well, relatively speaking, during the pandemic because all the truck drivers and other still had to
Okay.
be going back
Yeah.
and forth with goods and services across this great land.
Hmm.
Um, and in the markets where the residence inns, the extended stay sort of product have been,
Yeah.
overall, those have done very well also. But again, it's such a local, what we call local market knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every single different market is just a little bit different. You go to downtown San Francisco, and you hear a lot of issues, a lot of problems having to do, maybe not so much with San Francisco, but things such as homelessness.
Hmm.
I mean, there is the homeless situation in San Francisco has gotten so bad that, I mean, literally, you cannot go into a public elevator without smelling urine.
Wow.
And people just said, time out, I'm not going there.
Yeah.
So it's such a case by case situation. Every market truly, Trevor, is different.
And do you think the economic challenges that are around at the moment and how they're likely to impinge on families? I mean, to your point of having these inflated rates, I mean, as a consumer, because I understand what the industry is going through at the moment, there's a little bit of leeway because you think, okay, yeah, you guys have had a tough time, and I get it. If the demand is there, you're going to put the prices up. But there's a point at where you then think, well, how long is this going to last? Because if I'm paying $1,500 for something a couple of years ago, I was paying $1,000 for, and you haven't spent any money on the property, nothing's changed. It's like, well, at what point is that going to alter? And at what point are with fuel costs going up, general cost of living going up? I mean, are you still going to have people paying those high prices and even traveling? I know road trips is a big part of the American vacation space as well. What do you think the impacts are going to be in and around that area?
Well, this goes to what I call paradigm shifts, and that is it's hard to determine what a paradigm shift is until it's in your rearview mirror.
Hmm.
And right now, as you pointed out very truly, Trevor, there are a lot of bumps, in rate and so forth and so on. And as a firm that places debt, and we have to underwrite these transactions, whether it's a refinance or new construction or other,
Hmm.
we have to look at that and say, you're absolutely right. Is that going to last? Are people going to wake up and I'll say facetiously, wake up and smell the coffee
Mm.
and realize, this, I'm really not getting a perceived value here.
Yeah.
Why has this gone, as you said, from 1,000 to 1,500 or whatever the number is? I mean, I'm hearing stories out of Hawaii. A client of mine used to go every other month to visit some apartments he owned. He was paying like a 179 at the Marriott or Hilton. He's now paying 550.
Yeah. It's not just a fifty
At some
percent
point,
increase. It's like 300%,
yeah,
200,
yeah,
300%.
and
Yeah.
and and you're absolutely right. At some point in time, people are going to say, "Hey, this is not something's wrong here. There's a disconnect here.
Mm.
Let's just boycott that property until they get real as far as the rate." And I think that in some ways that has to happen.
Yeah.
The new normal, just because there's a new normal, that new normal is as subject to change on a go forward basis as anything has in the past. Just because it went up doesn't mean it can't go down.
No.
That's what people talk about, how in the hotel industry, how wonderful it is because it's an ATM, you can keep raising the rate. But as we both know, it can also go the other way.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's a true double-edged sword.
And picking up on your point there about when you're looking at the refinancing, you're having to weigh up what the risk is. I mean, there seems to be we've seen how leisure travel has returned. We've seen a bit of group business coming back. Corporate still seems to be lagging. I mean, if you're dealing with particular projects that you're looking at the financing of, and you're looking beyond this summer, obviously it depends on the mix and location, as you mentioned before. But there seems to be a lot of people hoping that the summer's going to be a good summer, and that will just buy them enough time to maybe roll into corporate and group business coming back strong into the fall and into the winter. What's your general view on that?
Well, I think you have to be realistic. Um, at this point in time, we just don't know when that business traveler is going to get on that airplane again.
Mm.
We're starting to get a sense of some of the group business, but you have to be a little bit bearish when
Mm,
underwriting these properties.
hmm
You have to rely heavily on uh, what 2019 was prior to this debacle.
hmm
That's your benchmark. And then 220 was pretty much a wash for everybody.
Yeah.
So then plug it into your little mental computer or your mind, how 221 is done,
Yeah.
and then make some assumptions based on that. But you can't be too much of a Pollyanna.
Yeah.
Yes, group's going to come back, but we don't know when. Yes, the business travel is going to come back, but we don't know when.
Mm,
We do know that after Labor Day, when the kids are back in school, just as last year, we are going to see, occupancy fall off, and you know, to hope for more than that, other than just whatever we see in the future, that's a tough call. I got my crystal ball at Amazon. It's not working very well, I can tell you.
mm. Well, hopefully you got a return policy with that anyway. Go for another one. So just looking at that situation, if I'm a hotelier, owner, whatever, or I'm running it for investors, however it may be structured, what's just picking up on your last points there, because we're going into the summer, but my window has got to start looking further out because, in effect, the next 3 months, I'm probably seeing what that trend looks like. So I'm looking further out. What is, if someone needs to be thinking about from a refinancing point of view or from an investing point of view, maybe they need to be investing back into the property because they haven't done anything for a couple of years. So I've got to go out into the markets and I've got to look at raising some capital. What would your advice be to someone who's coming to you in terms of how they're putting their proposal together? Because I guess if they're coming to you and they're showing rates that are, oh, well, we're currently doing rates at this kind of position, and not taking that Pollyanna view. I mean, that's just a completely unrealistic proposition to be trying to do anything with. So, what advice would you be giving somebody around how they should be thinking about the forecasting, the projections for the labor issues, for their leveraging, for their capex? What are just some advice in the here and now?
It just depends 100% on what the long-term goals are.
Mm-hmm.
If the property owner is a long-term, they're a legacy owner.
Mm-hmm.
They plan on owning this hotel for another 5 to 10 years.
Yep.
I've actually been saying since April of 2020, this is a great time to invest in CapEx
Okay.
and the money in your hotel.
Mm-hmm.
It's you're just taking a page out of what Bob Alter at Sunstone did back many, many years ago. You do a renovation, and then you watch your revenue increase as both occupancy and ADR go up. You've got perhaps in your neighborhood, your local market knowledge. You'll have the freshest box in town. The rooms will be fresh, the common areas will be fresh, the restaurant and bar will be fresh.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you'll cannibalize market share.
Yep.
If you're an owner that has not had the money for CapEx, and you're still very low on gas, you're very lean and mean. The market's pretty strong, pretty darn strong. Maybe it's time to sell.
Okay.
You know,
Interesting.
maybe you don't want to face the challenges or the labor issues that continue going on. I have people here in Southern California that are selling cleaners and hotels and other businesses just because getting laborers is so difficult.
Right.
They've just said, hey, I've been doing this for 20 years. Stick a fork in me. I'm done. So it really depends. If you're marginal and you think, hey, I'm not sure about this hotel business. It's been good to me, but I just don't know where the future is. Well, then look around. Look at some of the prices that have been taken on similar properties, and it might be a very good time to sell.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you 1031 out,
Right.
into some industrial or multifamily or mini storage,
Yep.
or some other commercial real estate. But again, if you're in it for the long haul, do that CapEx, spend the money, spend the time educating your employees. You reach out to Greta Brooks or one of the other great firms to to raise the level of the employee sophistication,
Hmm.
delivering that experience. Again, we're going back to that perceived value.
Yeah.
We've kind of lost the notion of perceived value. I did one of the very first Hampton Inn developments in the United States back in 1984, represented the developer. And his whole notion of a Hampton Inn was perceived value.
Right.
You got a clean room, you got a little croissant and coffee in the morning for the business person. They were,
Hmm.
they grabbed their coffee and they ran, but they came back, nice room, nice experience, $110, whatever it was back then, good perceived value. In some ways, we kind of need to get back to that. And as
Hmm.
you said, people are getting grumpier and grumpier when they go to a five-star hotel in Washington, D.C. or someplace, pay $500 a night, and they don't get turned down service or anything else they're accustomed to.
Yeah.
So again, it goes to the goal. If the long-term goal is long-term ownership, then spend that money on CapEx and improving your employees' educational level and so forth.
Hmm.
If you're getting a little tired of the hotel business, talk to your tax people and consider strongly selling, doing a 1031 and, just getting out of the business. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, uh, we all have to be agile, be savvy, be real time. And this business is not the same business. It's not your, father's Oldsmobile sort of business anymore for many people.
Well, that's what I was going to ask in terms of looking looking forward now. After seeing how hard the industry was hit, is there, you're saying there, maybe an opportunity to sell? And from what you're implying, the appetite for people to buy is strong. So,
Very strong.
despite everything that's gone on, the hotel industry is still seen as a strong industry to be investing in and being part of. Yeah.
Oh, very much so. One of my dear friends back in the 80s, a longtime hotelier, said facetiously, the hotel business is like a screen door.
Hmm.
Everybody, all the flies on the outside want in, and all the flies on the inside want out. So it remains a very robust industry. But again, for some people, it just may be time.
Do they need? Is there a different type of investor, a different sort of attitude that comes into the hotel industry from from your experience? Because you made something earlier on about being perceived as an ATM, which just keeps churning out money. But there is a flip side to that as well.
Well, there absolutely is, and I mean, I've been through enough cycles that I can remember back about, I believe it was 1990. I have to go back and check my quotes because I was quoted extensively in the LA Times on this particular subject. But the Bonaventure Hotel, which is a massive, I believe it's almost 1,600 room hotel in downtown Los Angeles, had just been appraised by one of the major accounting firms, so to remain nameless, for about $288 million.
Hmm.
Part of that was based on the fact that the Hotel Bel Air had just sold for about
Okay.
1.2 million a guest room, which was a high watermark without any
Wow.
question in that era. And as I was mentioned, I was actually quoted in that sale in the Wall Street Journal, and I told my dear friend Mitch Pacelli, who was the interviewer, that the Japanese perceived that as a piece of art that had cash flow. That was the only way to justify that million to a guest room price back in 1990. But to go back to the Bonaventure, fast forward a year and a half, Equitable Real Estate forecloses, and the property was sold to a investor for $56 million.
Hmm.
Well, that's quite a swing.
Hmm. Yeah, just about.
In about a year and a half, from the alleged value of $288 million to an actual sale of $56 million. That's rather impressive. Well, what that spells is risk.
Yeah.
No question that the hotel business, it's riskier and it's more complicated. Also, you think
Hmm.
about a hotel, running a hotel. 30% of the hotels in this country are on ground leases. So many properties have a ground lease, and then they have the debt,
Mm.
and then they have the brand, and then they may have a separate third-party management company. These are complicated businesses,
Yeah.
you know. Whereas you buy an industrial building, you basically buy a bond.
Yeah.
You get your rent check every month, it's triple net. Maybe once in a while, every 5 years, you have to redo the parking lot or do something or put a new roof on it. But it's pretty much a bond.
Mm.
Whereas the hotel business is basically a 24/7, 365 business. So the difference clearly is the risk piece of it.
Yeah,
And
that
that's
makes
why our
complete
cap
sense.
rates typically, are higher than our competitive set
Yeah,
for that very reason.
yeah.
You know.
And I guess just trying tying some of this up because I'm conscious of your time as well. But the perfect storm is maybe the wrong terminology. But when you look at what we're coming out of, we've had hotels that have maybe dragged themselves through the last couple of years, but they won't have been investing and maybe know that they need to invest. At the moment, they may be able to charge higher rates, but as you said, that perceived value is going to kick in at some point in time, and then maybe there's going to be some sort of correction. You would imagine if they're looking to go out and raise finance, then the temptation to maybe over forecast what you think the property could be doing, plus because you've also got to cover what are potential higher costs, plus then you're paying more to then service the debt as well. It feels like it's a really tough position. So the appetite is there, but I would imagine that trying to structure it properly and get the right mix and balance is probably going to be more critical now than it would have been 3, 4, 5 years ago. Or is that my naivety? Because I'm certainly not a financier.
No, I don't think you're naive at all on that subject. The bottom line is rates are going up. The Fed has made that crystal clear.
Mm,
So that's pretty much a fait accompli. We don't know how much, but
mm,
it's going up. Labor costs, I understand that Walmart starts at $25 an hour
mm-hmm.
to work at a Walmart store. And many hoteliers used to paying, 12, 13, $14 an hour.
Yeah.
So the labor, that's another issue. It's not going anywhere. Again, do we know where it's going? No. Is it an issue? Yes. So these are all real issues. And
Mm,
yes, they do have to be seriously contemplated. And that's why I say for some people, perhaps it's just the time to say, stick a fork in me, I'm done.
yeah.
Take that capital and go someplace else. But for most of us that are doing this for so long, it's kind of water off a duck's back. And it's just okay. So we have a new problem to solve. Because we are problem solvers. That's kind of our mantra at my firm is we're problem solvers.
and I think
So
that's
that's another problem to solve.
yeah, and I think that's the point, isn't it? That if you're in one of those positions where you're in it for the long term, but you need to think, how am I going to structure this to be able to be around for the long term? Or if you're on the other side, which is just, okay, I thought I maybe wanted to hang around, but the last 2 years has just shown me that I don't, I need to get out, to use your phrase, I'm done, stick a fork in me. Then I guess that's where your experience, your time in the industry, your time served working on these projects and structuring these kind of deals is where that level of expertise can be drawn on to at least be able to advise and start to pull together the appropriate solution that would be necessary depending on what their short, medium, or long term strategy is.
Well, you're absolutely right. And see, we play both sides of the game. We play
Mm-hmm.
we play in the healthy side of the hotel business, refinancing. We do a tremendous amount of new build construction debt, which is definitely on the healthy side. But by the same token, and we do place equity on projects on a case by case. Equity is more challenging, always has been, probably always will be.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side, when things get kind of nasty and grumpy and gnarly, we have actually been involved in this is our fifth real estate debacle.
Yeah.
We were involved back in 1989 in the VMS Realty bankruptcy, which started as a $6.5 billion workout, ended being an $8 billion workout. We were hands-on that project. We were very hands-on during the RTC debacle in the 90s. My partner, Michael Browningham, sold over 270 distressed hotels and notes. I sold over 100 distressed hotels when I was in my days with C.B. Richard Ellis. And then we had the terrible events after 9/11, and then the Great Recession, and now a pandemic.
Yeah.
This is our fifth rodeo, so to speak. So, we understand the stress side very, very well, but we're also understand the healthy side of the new build and refinancing and providing either debt or equity for that CapEx injection to clean that property up and make it pretty again and get our guests to be happy and give us good Yelp reviews and all those important things that all our technology and social media has the way that has changed the landscape there, which is again 10 or 12 years ago, who knew what Yelp was, sort of thing. But it's a big deal, a very big deal now.
Yeah, and that all comes back to the perceived value, doesn't it? Because if you're charging these rates, they'll last for a period of time. But if you then go back to your rates that you were before, but then your property is looking a bit tired now, then the perceived value, you have another issue there as well. But that's it.
Well, that's it. As I said earlier, it's just little things. I mean, I've traveled a lot. I had been very fortunate to travel a lot, both personally and professionally. And you miss little things like the mints on the pillows and the turn down service and so forth. And when you're paying a big number, it's I guess we're spoiled. But guess what? We're paying the big bucks, so we kind of have that right to be spoiled. And that is going to come back to bite operators that don't remember that how important that perceived value mantra is, whether it's a budget hotel or a Langham in London or somewhere.
Yeah, no, makes perfect sense. Look, I really appreciate you joining us. It's been great to have the chance to talk with you. Great to have the chance to hear your views. All of it based on, as I think anyone who is listening and watching this can hear, obviously the depth of experience that you had, and as you say, now this being the fifth challenge that you've gone through. So I think if there is anybody out there, either on the healthy side or the not so healthy side, then I think they're probably pretty clear that they know who they should reach out to and try and make contact with. So thanks so much for your time.
Also,
really. Go on.
Just so you know, we don't judge.
No, you don't want to be judging, do you? There's enough of that goes on without.
Well, the reality is, this whole COVID pandemic, I call it a black swan.
Yeah.
Nobody caused this. This is not the hotelier's fault.
No, absolutely not.
All this happened. This is, totally an outside event out of anyone's control. So there's no, just because you're in trouble financially, there's no blame here. It's a matter of putting down getting your pencil up, getting a fresh piece of paper and figure out how to solve this problem,
This fits under that force majeure, doesn't it? This is totally outside of your control.
Yep.
Brilliant. Well, look, thanks so much for your time. It's really appreciated and great.
Thank you, Trevor.
Take care.
Great. Bye-bye.
Well, I hope that conversation was of interest, and thanks again to Dr. Don for joining us. If you have any thoughts or views on this conversation, please feel free to comment below. And if you like the discussion, please don't forget a thumbs up. If you are interested in more of our videos, here is a link to our Expert Insights playlist, and here is the link to our Coffee Time Chat playlist. And here is the button if you'd like to subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos. Thanks again for watching.